Okay, so it's a lovely day today, so I thought I would take you to the bottom of my garden. I'm going to talk today about ideas, opinions and thoughts and how we form them. So I'll start you off with a quote by Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. My idea today is that our opinions are formed by our values. Our values are like our deepest underlying structure. And when we're being rooted in our values and flexible with our ideas and our opinions, we are being more effective and more likely to solve our problems and conflicts a lot faster. So this whole video today has been inspired by the interview between Jeremy Paxman and Russell Brand that happened a few months ago and was quite controversial. And I'm going to use that later on as an illustration of what it means on one hand to defend an opinion, defend an idea or a thought, and on the other hand expressing a value. So I'm here talking today because I've been coached in the past few years on a particular way of reflecting upon myself that has enabled me to become more effective and solve my problems and conflicts much faster and more effectively. I'm going to explain to you today this concept by explaining what I mean by a value and what I mean by an opinion. Use this case study of Russell Brand and Jeremy Paxman, and then hopefully leave you with an exercise where you can experience what it is that I'm talking about. So a value. A value can be shown by a statement you make about yourself that says what you value about the world. So I value life, I value equality, I value peace. You can get to your value system by observing the emotional response that you have to life and the things that happen in it. For example, I saw the other day a YouTube video about what's happening in Venezuela, and I had an emotional response to that to say, I feel what this government is doing is wrong, or I feel what the students are doing, standing up for themselves, is right. So there's a feeling that evokes in me. An opinion, however, is a mental standpoint. It's like a mental viewpoint of what you think about something. So, for example, I think that the government should be engaging more peacefully with its people because it's currently creating more problems than it's solving. My opinion is there because of the value. So it's like my opinion is expressing the value, if you like. You could say that opinions are what we think about the world and values are what we feel about the world. So going on to Russell Brand and Jeremy Paxman. If you hadn't guessed already, Russell is the guy who expresses his values, and I feel Jeremy is the one who's defending his opinion. So I want to talk more about how they're talking rather than what they're talking about, because there's a lot of controversy about what they were talking about. But I'm going to speak about how they were talking. So what somebody would usually do when being faced by Jeremy Paxman is defend themselves and defend their opinion, because fair play, he's an intimidating interviewer and you want to defend yourself. But the problem with this is that when we fearfully defend ourselves, we revert to our old known conditioning, we revert to our old known thinking and practiced thought patterns. So the same thinking happens all over again, and like the quote says, the Einstein quote, we need to change our thinking to be able to solve our problems. What was it again? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Whereas what happens is Russell is expressing his values. He expresses his values that he feels about humanity, and so because he's rooted there, it means that his thinking can be flexible and it can evolve in the moment. Jeremy, on the other hand, is defending his opinion. He has an opinion of Russell and an opinion of politics, and you can see that he's defending that and he's manipulating Russell around, or trying to manipulate him around to his point of view. And it's just not working, because when you're coming from that place that Russell's coming from, it's like he doesn't have to be right. He doesn't have to prove himself. He doesn't have to prove his idea, and his thinking can be flexible and can move around whatever Jeremy's saying. What happens is Russell ends up being very creative and engaging, and Jeremy ends up being his conversation is very stagnant and repetitive, and you can see this is quite obvious when you look back at the video in this way. What happens at the end of the video is that all of a sudden Russell talks to Jeremy's sense of his values. And he says to him, "I saw you in that video, I saw you in that program, who do you think you are?" And you cried because of what happened to your grandmother. And all of a sudden Jeremy kind of changed and he started listening to Russell, because he'd got to a place in him, he got to that place in Jeremy where he had an emotional response to life and the things that happen in it. And it's like that's a more truthful place to come from. When you're saying how you feel about something, you're saying how your personal story relates to that thing. And when you're telling your personal story, people listen. When you say what you think about something, the person who's telling you the opinion is more invested in their opinion than you are. They're more likely to listen to something if you're telling your personal story about it. So yes, so we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I think Einstein's right, you can't. If you defend your thoughts, ideas and opinions, then you can't move beyond your thoughts, ideas and opinions. Whereas if you defend your values, you can evolve your thinking from what it was before. For the end of this video, to kind of conclude this, how do you feel? This is a little something that you can do. How do you feel about what I've just said? Before you agree with me with your mind, or you disagree with me with your mind, ask yourself, how do you feel about it? And then say, why do you feel? Why do I feel the way I do about this? And if you're struggling to find, let that feeling form into words. And if you're struggling to find the words to describe that feeling, it means that your meaning has become bigger than the words that you have to describe it. And your thinking will have to evolve as a result of that. So just to remind you of the quote, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them.